Dust swirled in the fading evening light, settling on the weathered wooden porch of a solitary ranch house. Lila stood, her heart racing, the weight of her world pressing on her fragile shoulders. A tattered dress clung to her, barely concealing the bruises of betrayal. Her cousin's face flashed in her memory, a cruel smirk as he sold her for a handful of coins. Across the yard, Jack leaned against a rusted fence, his broad silhouette stark against the vast, empty landscape. He watched her, a silent guardian with eyes that spoke of unspoken sorrows. The ranch was his refuge, but it felt hollow until Lila arrived. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lila felt an unfamiliar urge stir within her. She took a step forward, her limp a quiet echo of her past, and began to move, her body finding rhythm in the stillness of the night. With the first rays of dawn spilling like gold across the barren landscape, Lila stood in the cramped alley behind the auction barn, feeling the sting of cold metal against her wrists. The rough ropes dug into her skin, a grim reminder of the betrayal that had led her here. Hope twisted in her stomach like a venomous snake, a cruel contrast to the warm sun that illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. Each breath felt heavy, swallowed by the suffocating silence around her. She had imagined so many times that her brother would come for her, whisk her away to safety, but instead, he had handed her over to the highest bidder, a deal struck without so much as a glance back. The repugnant scent of sweat and desperation lingered in the air, mingling with the distant sound of cattle lowing. Lila felt a shiver run down her spine, her heart racing as she envisioned her brother's face, his eyes void of any warmth. It had been a choice made in darkness, a transaction that consumed the last remnants of trust she had held. The realization settled in her bones, bitter and gnawing, as she leaned against the rough wooden wall, her limping gait a constant reminder of her own frailty, of a body that had betrayed her in one terrible moment. Across the yard, Jack stood with his arms folded, the sun glinting off his broad shoulders. He surveyed the scene like a hawk, eyeing the collection of desperate souls put on display for the amusement of the wealthy. His eyes darkened with the weight of years spent acquiring the sprawling ranch that lay beyond the barns. He had carved out his empire from nothing, and now he was ready to add to it, searching for something to fill the void left by a lifetime of loneliness. As his gaze landed on Lila, a flicker of intrigue sparked within him, igniting questions he had never thought to ask. Who was this girl, limping and bruised, yet still standing tall against the world? Jack's instincts as a businessman kicked in, but something else churned beneath the surface, an unnameable urge to protect this wounded creature. He felt an echo of his own life in her vulnerability, a thread of empathy that tugged at him insistently. The crowd's laughter washed over him, a harsh contrast to the girl's quiet suffering. He could see the way she cringed under their leering stares, how her body seemed to fold in on itself, retreating from the world around her. For a moment, he wished he could reverse time, to unsee what he was seeing, but that was not who he was. He made decisions. He didn't tremble at the mercy of fate. As the auctioneer's voice echoed through the barn, Jack wrestled with his conscience, a familiar tug-of-war that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Each number called out was a reminder of Lila's worth in the eyes of men, an object to be bought and sold for profit. The weight of the atmosphere pressed down on him, guilt mingled with longing as he caught her eye. A silent connection sparked between them, a recognition of their mutual suffering. Two souls navigating a world that demanded they stay distant, disconnected. He wondered if she could feel it too, the invisible thread weaving through the crowded barn. Lila's heart raced as she felt eyes upon her, a mix of dread and defiance igniting something deep within her. She pushed through the pain of her injury, focusing on the sound of a distant fiddle, the haunting notes spilling into the air like a call to the wild. In her mind, she closed her eyes, imagining the rhythm of the dance she had once performed, the joy it had given her, and the way it had pulled her from darkness. If only she could lose herself in that world again, where the music didn't carry the weight of her troubles. But here, under judgment's harsh glare, she felt the music slip away just out of reach. Jack observed her closely, struck by how she seemed to twirl within her thoughts, her heartbeat aligning with a song only she could hear. He felt his heart clench at the sight of her struggle. With every moment that passed, he realized he wanted to know more, not just about her, but about the ghost of pain that seemed to keep her shackled. He couldn't fathom what had brought her here, but the determination flickering in her eyes ignited something in him, a fierce desire to restore what had been taken from her, even if she herself couldn't yet see a way back. As the bids escalated, the air around them thickened with tension, each number sounding like a death knell for her freedom. Jack knew the business. His mind calculated the risk against reward, but his heart raced to a different drum. The emotional distance that had defined his world began to waver, shaken by the unlikeliest of encounters. Lila was not the only one on trial in this moment. He stood on the precipice of a decision that could rewrite the paths of both their lives. Under the scrutiny of strangers, Lila stood tall but felt small, a fragile candle flickering in a storm. The distance stretched between her and the man watching her, a chasm filled with unspoken words and unshared fears. She was trapped between two fates, the one outlined by her brother's betrayal and the one that flickered in Jack's gaze. Uncertainty clawed at her insides, and as the gavel came down on her future, she closed her eyes once more, hoping against hope to find a thread of light in the darkness. Lila stepped through the creaking wooden gate, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The sprawling ranch spread out before her, a vast expanse of golden grass, under a sky streaked with bruised clouds. Vibrant wildflowers danced in the gentle breeze, but their beauty felt distant, overshadowed by the weight of her new reality. Jack stood beside a weathered fence, a shadow among shadows, his rugged silhouette stark against the horizon. Lila couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes, fear and uncertainty swirling in her chest like a storm waiting to break. As she approached, the air thickened with an unspoken tension. Jack's gaze surveyed her with a mix of curiosity and caution, his lips pressed into a thin line that betrayed little emotion. He was a man caught between worlds, half hidden under the weight of his wealth and solitude. She wondered how someone so seemingly powerful could feel so distant. With each step she took, her limp echoed louder in her ears, reminding her of the long journey that had brought her here, of the choices made for her by those she had trusted most. Jack motioned toward the stables, his hand barely moving, yet Lila instinctively understood. She followed him through the threshold, the scent of hay and leather wrapping around her like a familiar embrace. Horses stood tethered in their stalls, flicking their tails lazily, indifferent to the tension in the air. Lila caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the barn door, mother's face shadowed by pain, father's anger lingering in the lines of her brow. But she quickly pushed those thoughts away, focusing instead on the rhythmic sound of hooves against stone, a symphony she yearned to join. Days blurred into one another, each morning beginning the same way, the crack of dawn breaking through the horizon, Jack already tending to the horses when Lila emerged. She was a ghost haunting the edges of his world, her presence felt but unacknowledged, dismissed as a mere burden. He never spoke much, each word measured, as if he feared what would spill forth if he allowed emotion to seep through. In the awkward silences, Lila found herself holding her breath, waiting for the moment when their lives would intersect beyond the confines of duty. In the afternoons, Lila practiced walking in the quiet solitude of the barn, her limp a stubborn reminder of her past. Yet she felt the stirring of something deep within her, a flicker of hope, a glimmer of defiance. As the sunlight streamed through the barn's dusty windows, she would close her eyes and imagine herself dancing, sweeping away the shadows that clung to her like a second skin. Jack would sometimes glance her way, his expression unreadable, but Lila sensed a flicker of interest in his steely eyes. It made her heart race, igniting a flame in her that she thought had long been extinguished. The evenings brought a cool stillness, and Lila would often sit outside, listening to the world around her, the rustle of leaves, the distant sound of the creek, the faint hooting of an owl. Jack would join her sometimes, the two of them sharing the night air in comfortable silence. Occasionally, he would talk about the ranch, sharing stories of his childhood, of how he had built this sanctuary from the ground up. Lila listened, fascinated, her longing for connection growing. She watched as he spoke, the lines of his face softening in the moonlight, and for the first time, she felt the stirrings of admiration. One evening, fueled by the growing warmth of their shared moments, Lila took a deep breath. She stood slowly and began to dance, her movements tentative at first, her body still learning how to let go. She imagined the world falling away, the weight of her past lifting like mist dissipating in the morning sun. Jack stood frozen, watching her with a mix of surprise and something deeper that she couldn't quite decipher. As she twirled, the limp that had once defined her began to fade, replaced by a grace she had thought lost forever. The ranch, once a prison of silence, burst alive around her. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he witnessed the transformation. Each step she took carried joy that seemed to break from the chains of her past. In that moment, he realized he had not merely bought a girl. He had welcomed a spirit ready to reclaim her voice, her artistry. As Lila danced with the moon as her witness, something unspoken shifted between them, an understanding that was more than mere circumstance, a promise that both of them were on the brink of change. The night lingered, wrapped in the magic of newfound connection, as Jack made a silent vow. He would help her, not just to heal her wounded leg, but to awaken her spirit. He would no longer remain a distant figure in her life, but a partner ready to bridge the chasm between them. In that moment of shared vulnerability under the stars, the ranch was no longer just vast expanses of land and labor. It was a stage waiting for the both of them to step forward and begin anew. Lila stood at the edge of the barn, the evening sun casting long shadows over the dusty ground. She'd spent the day tending to the horses, her fingers sore yet calloused from years of hard work. She watched Jack from a distance, the mysterious rancher with a hidden fortune. He moved through the stables with a fluidity she found both fascinating and unnerving. Each glance directed her way sent ripples of anxiety through her, but also a spark of curiosity. She couldn't help but wonder what lay beneath the surface of his stoic demeanor and why he appeared so intent on understanding her. Days blended into a rhythm of tasks, interspersed with moments of shared solitude. Lila would mend fences or feed the cattle, while Jack busied himself with the machinery that kept the ranch running. They shared glances, brief but meaningful. Lila felt a flicker of connection whenever he caught her eye, a sense of unspoken understanding that both thrilled and terrified her. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was probing her for something deeper, digging beneath her skin to uncover her secrets, while her own heart guarded its truths ferociously. One afternoon, after another long day of work, Lila found herself alone in the barn, a slow song drifting from an old radio. She closed her eyes and let the music wash over her, stepping into a world that she had abandoned long ago. With the limping gait that often haunted her, she began to dance, her body moving in ways that felt liberating. It was a dance of freedom, of pain and joy intertwined, a release of everything she kept bottled inside. Jack, who had been standing just outside watching her, felt his breath catch. The way Lila moved captivated him, igniting a fire of curiosity he couldn't ignore. As she twirled, the carefree spirit of her dance brought a rawness to the air that instantly shifted. The moment shattered as she caught sight of him watching. A flush crept across her cheeks, panic replacing the joy that had enveloped her just seconds before. In that instant, Lila's confidence crumbled, and she felt exposed, laid bare in front of him. Anger flared up within her. This was her sanctuary, a place for her to be free, and he had invaded it. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, her voice laced with defensiveness. Jack stepped into the barn, the wooden floor creaking under his weight. "I didn't mean to interrupt, His eyes searched for the right words, their sincerity evident. "You dance beautifully." His admiration felt like a double-edged sword. It brought her comfort, but also intensified her fear. Lila crossed her arms, unwilling to let his compliment pierce the armor she had forged around herself. "I'm not looking for praise," she replied, trying to mask the tumult of emotions raging inside her. Despite her defensiveness, Jack persisted, intrigued by the layers he sensed beneath her tough exterior. He began to share snippets of his own life, tales of his childhood on the ranch, of lessons learned under the relentless sun. The more he opened up, the more Lila felt the weight of her own silence. A hidden warmth began to bloom within her, drawing her closer to him, even as her instinct urged her to retreat. Every story and every laugh he shared chipped away at the wall she had built, exposing the vulnerability she feared the most. Yet every personal connection sparked a new conflict within Lila, a battle between the woman she had been and the woman she could become. How could she trust him after what her cousin had done, selling her off like a piece of livestock? She recalled the bitter betrayal like a flare of pain in her heart, a reminder of her past that she was desperate to escape. But Jack represented something different. He was not a shadow of her past. He offered her a glimpse of a future, one where she could dance without fear. Yet uncertainty held her back, shackling her to the ground. One evening, as they worked late, Lila's defenses began to falter. Jack spoke of dreams and desires, of building a life where passion thrived alongside responsibility. "You can be both," he said, his voice steady and inviting. "Why not chase what you truly want?" Lila's heart raced at the thought, a flicker of hope igniting within. Could she really shed the weight of her past and embrace a new beginning? As she met his gaze, she saw something she had never expected, a genuine belief in her potential. With each passing day, their routines entwined them further, an invisible thread weaving through their interactions. They shared conversations filled with laughter, but Lila often felt the pull of her old life tugging at her, reminding her to stay guarded. Still, Jack continued to chip away at her walls, patiently unraveling the knots of her fear. In the quiet moments after sunset, when the air was thick with possibility, Lila began to wonder if she could truly trust again, and if Jack was the key to unlocking the person she truly wanted to be. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden hues across the sprawling ranch. Lila stood on the porch, her hands resting on the weather-beaten railing, the cool wood grounding her amidst the chaos of her thoughts. Ever since Jack had rescued her from the clutches of her cousin's greed, she had found herself tangled in a whirlwind of emotions. Joy flickered within her like the fireflies emerging at twilight, but shadows chased it away, whispering doubts in the back of her mind. Jack emerged from the barn, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the amber sky. He glanced over, catching Lila's eye, sending a flutter of warmth through her. The way he moved, confident yet gentle, made her heart race, and she knew she was falling for him against the very logic of her situation. With every moment she spent at the ranch, the weight of her limping leg felt lighter, but insecurities crept in during the stillness of the evening air. "Lila," Jack called, his voice like warm honey wrapping around her. "Want to help me with something?" The invitation hung in the air, rich with possibility. Yet Lila hesitated, her mind clouded with uncertainty. What if I disappoint him? The fear coiled tightly within her, squeezing her heart. She had only just begun to believe in her worth, but the thought of failing Jack consumed her. As she stepped off the porch, Lila's ankle wobbled slightly, a remnant of her past that still haunted her. She caught herself just in time, but the embarrassment washed over her in a wave. Jack witnessed the stumble, his brow furrowing. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etching his features. Lila forced a smile, brushing off his question, but the warmth she had felt moments earlier was replaced by a chill of self-doubt. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, the words catching in her throat. She could see the flicker of disappointment in Jack's eyes, and it stung deeper than she expected. The misconception settled in the space between them, like an invisible barrier. She wanted to scream that she was more than her leg, that she could dance, could be free, could be enough for him. But the words tangled in her chest, suffocating beneath the weight of her vulnerability. Jack nodded, though his gaze lingered longer than intended, searching her face for a trace of truth. "I really think you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. Just the other night, that dance you did, it was incredible." His words wrapped around her like a delicate embrace, igniting a flicker of hope inside her soul. Lila's heart soared momentarily, but doubt quickly extinguished the flame. She couldn't help but think he saw her as a trophy, a shattered girl he had saved, not as a partner in his life. She took a hesitant step forward, anchoring her thoughts on Jack's sincerity. "Do you really mean that?" The question slipped out, fragile as glass. Jack's expression transformed, his eyes softening like the twilight sky. "Of course I do," he said gently, stepping closer. His presence was warm, a safe harbor amidst her storm. Yet Lila felt the trembling of her heart, and she recoiled slightly, afraid to bridge the chasm that had formed in the wake of her doubts. "Then why do I feel like an imposter?" Lila's voice cracked, the rawness in her tone pulling at Jack's heartstrings. It was a truth she had never spoken aloud, a secret that intertwined with her everyday existence. "You think I'm just this girl you saved, but I want to be so much more." Tears brimmed in her eyes, an eruption of vulnerability she had kept hidden beneath layers of strength. To be seen, to be known, it was both terrifying and liberating. Jack reached out, catching her chin between his fingers, lifting her gaze to meet his. "Lila, you are so much more than the struggles you carry. You've danced through storms while others have drowned. Please don't ever doubt that." The simplicity of his words wrapped around her heart like a lifeline. In that moment, the dance between them shifted, becoming a shared rhythm, a promise of understanding, a bridge to their healing paths. Lila felt a crack in her defenses, a willingness to embrace the truth he offered, even as fear threatened to overwhelm her. The sun began to set, draping the hills in shades of gold and amber as Lila shuffled across the worn wooden floor of the barn. The crisp scent of hay lingered in the air, masking the faintest hint of regret that followed her like a shadow. Jack stood nearby, leaning against a support beam, arms crossed and eyes softened by the fading light. She had never seen him so contemplative, his usually sharp demeanor dulled by a quiet introspection. Their gaze met, and in that moment, the world around them fell away, leaving only the hum of cicadas and the distant call of a lonely horse. Lila's heart raced, the fleeting connection igniting a spark she had hidden beneath layers of self-doubt and pain. She had long ago resigned herself to a life of anonymity, believing herself unworthy of attention or affection. But Jack was different, a man whose gentle strength had begun to unravel her defenses. She took a hesitant step forward, the weight of her limp a reminder of the barriers she had long accepted. Jack straightened, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them as the air thickened with unacknowledged feelings. "Do you want to dance?" Jack's voice broke the silence, each syllable hanging in the air like a promise. Lila's breath caught in her throat. This man, who had become her unlikely savior, stood before her with a vulnerability she had never imagined he would show. She glanced down at her feet, the ache in her ankle a haunting reminder of her past, a past that felt like a lead weight. Yet beneath her fear, a flicker of desire sparked. She had spent countless nights dreaming of dancing, of escaping the confines of her life through movement. But now, in his presence, it felt possible. I don't know," she stammered, the words tumbling out in an anxious dance of their own. Jack stepped closer, his towering figure casting a long shadow across the floor. Lila felt the warmth radiating from him, a magnetic pull that drew her in. "Just one song," he urged softly, extending his hand towards her. It was a gesture as simple as it was profound, an invitation and a challenge wrapped in one. She hesitated, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her, but those deep brown eyes held a promise she couldn't ignore. With a trembling hand, she reached out and placed her palm against his. The contact sent a jolt through her, igniting a long-forgotten hunger for connection. Jack's fingers enveloped hers, firm yet gentle, grounding her in the moment. They moved to the center of the barn, where shafts of golden sunlight pierced through the cracks in the wooden walls, illuminating their makeshift stage. Lila's pulse quickened as she shifted her weight, testing the ground beneath her feet. She looked up at Jack, who smiled reassuringly, his expression a blend of encouragement and anticipation. As the music began, a nostalgic tune from a bygone era, Lila felt the rhythm pulse through her veins. It was the kind of song that spoke to the soul, and for the first time in years, she felt herself surrendering to it. She began to sway, her limbs adjusting to the beat, and Jack matched her movements, leading her with a grace that felt natural and free. Lila's heart soared, the weight of her insecurities lifted with each step they took together. They spun and twirled in a delicate harmony, creating an unspoken dialogue that spoke of trust and understanding. In that vibrant moment, Lila's limp faded into the background, eclipsed by the melody of their shared dance. She glanced at Jack, who watched her with an intensity that made her cheeks flush. There was no judgment in his gaze, only admiration and respect. Lila felt seen for the first time, not as a girl burdened by her past, but as someone capable of beauty and joy. The barn walls echoed their laughter, resonating with the rhythm of their hearts, entwined in an unbreakable bond. As the song drew to a close, Lila felt a bittersweet pang in her chest. She didn't want the moment to end. In a final flourish, she spun, her arms reaching out wide as if to embrace the very air around them. Jack mirrored her, stepping into her orbit, creating a cocoon of warmth and safety. When the last note hung in the air, he pulled her close, his breath warm against her ear. "You're incredible," he whispered, the sincerity in his voice wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. With the fading light casting a warm glow around them, Lila knew that something had shifted within her. A connection had been forged, delicate yet unyielding. She dared to believe that perhaps she wasn't just the girl sold by her cousin or the one marked by tragedy. In Jack's eyes, she was a dancer, a partner, and for the first time, she felt the pulse of hope blooming in her heart. Lila sat on the old wooden porch, her fingers tracing the grain of the weathered boards beneath her. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced around her. Every part of her wanted to break the silence that often filled the spaces between her and Jack, but the fear of her own voice held her captive. The once vibrant girl with the dreams of limitless dance was now a ghost, bound by the weight of unspoken words. She could hear the distant rustle of cattle and the gentle neighing of the horses, but the sounds no longer inspired her. Instead, they reminded her of her struggles, of the things left unexpressed, of a language she felt increasingly detached from. Across the porch, Jack leaned against the railing, watching her with an intensity that made her heart race, but also terrified her. He was patient, allowing her this quietude, yet she could feel the electricity in the air, the tension of things unsaid. She caught glimpses of his life beneath the surface, a secret wealth that he wore like armor, a hidden tenderness that cradled the raw edges of her existence. Each day he repaired the gaps she had carried for so long, and yet the words she hungered to say felt trapped, a dance she could no longer perform. The sky darkened, hues of purple and orange bleeding together as the last vestiges of daylight surrendered. Lila swallowed hard, the lump in her throat a constant reminder of her struggle. In that moment, she wanted to scream, to let the world know she was still alive, still capable of emotion, of dreams. But the quiet kept enveloping her, seeping into her bones, and she felt small under its weight. She fought the urge to speak, her breath hitching as memories of past betrayals echoed in her mind. She could feel Jack's gaze, a steady pulse of warmth that made her heart flutter, yet felt unbearably heavy. "Lila," Jack said softly, breaking the stillness. The sound of her name from his lips was like a key turning in a lock. She looked up, her eyes meeting his, drawn into the depths of his concern. His voice cut through the fog that clouded her mind, sparking a flicker of courage within her. "You can talk to me. You don't have to hold everything inside." It was an invitation wrapped in sincerity, and it shattered something inside her. Perhaps it was the calmness of his words or the gentle way he watched her, but for the first time she felt permission to speak. A million thoughts rushed through her mind, cascading like a waterfall of unspoken fears and desires. Her heart thundered in her chest as she fought to articulate the chaos inside. She started, the sound foreign on her tongue, raw and trembling. Her voice cracked, a single tear escaping to trail down her cheek. She had waited too long to say anything, but the moment the syllable escaped her lips, she felt a sense of liberation. The boundaries of her silence began to erode as desperation clashed with her longing to be seen and heard. Jack straightened, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "Yes?" He leaned in slightly, his expression unwavering, as if he could coax the words from her with his mere presence. Lila took a deep breath, drawing strength from his unwavering gaze. She wanted to share her dreams, her fears, the way his kindness had unlocked a door she thought would remain forever sealed. Yet she was still haunted by the fear of vulnerability, of revealing the scars left by those who had come before him. Each thought threatened to drown her, but the memory of his steadfastness urged her to continue. "Jack, I want to dance," she finally whispered, the words spilling forth from the depths of her heart. "I want to feel the music in my bones again." There it was, the revelation that had lingered in the shadows of her mind. She could feel the weight lift slightly, as if admitting it had transformed the very fabric of her being. "But I'm scared. What if it hurts? What if I fail?" Doubt nectar lingered on her lips, even as her heart soared with the weight of her confession. His expression softened, and for a moment, time seemed to hold its breath. "Then you dance with me," Jack replied, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "You won't have to do it alone." Lila couldn't help but smile back, feeling an unexpected warmth surge within her. The fear hadn't vanished completely, but the thought of sharing that dance with him ignited a spark of hope. The struggle for her voice continued, but in that moment she realized that it was a journey worth embarking on, and perhaps, just perhaps, she could find her way back to herself beneath the weight of his unwavering support. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, and darkness enveloped them, yet Lila felt a shift within. The silence that had once loomed heavy now felt like space, an opening for possibility. She had taken the first step, and with Jack by her side, she believed she could continue to dance into the unknown. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting the vast expanse of the ranch in hues of gold and crimson. Lila stood at the edge of the sprawling field, her heart pounding in rhythm with the distant sound of hooves thundering against the earth. The air was charged with anticipation, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She could hear Jack's laughter echoing from behind, a sound that had become a beacon of warmth in her life, one she never wanted to lose. For so long, Lila had been the girl hidden in the shadows, sold by her cousin, and trapped in a world that had tried to beat the spirit out of her. Yet here, in this place, Jack had coaxed her out of her shell, revealing a vibrant soul that had lain dormant for far too long. She had danced under the vast expanse of night, every twirl and leap pulling her closer to the person she once was, before the world had narrowed her existence to pain and silence. Jack's eyes had always sparkled with something deeper, an unspoken understanding that made her feel safe enough to let herself soar. But now, as the warm wind swept through the field, carrying the familiar scent of wildflowers and freedom, fear gripped her heart. Tonight was the night of the grand celebration, and she would perform before the entire ranch community. Jack had tirelessly prepared her for this moment, believing in her tenacity when she hardly believed in herself. Yet doubt seeped through the cracks of her confidence. What if she stumbled? What if she fell? The memory of her limp haunted her, threatening to unravel everything he had rebuilt within her. "Lila!" Jack's voice cut through the cacophony of her thoughts, rich and grounding. She turned to see him striding toward her, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the fiery sunset. He paused, taking a moment to drink in her beauty, the way the evening light danced in her hair and highlighted the determination etched on her face. "You're going to be amazing tonight. I can feel it." His confidence wrapped around her like a warm embrace, but it did little to quiet the tempest within. "Jack," she began, her voice barely a whisper, lost beneath the growing sounds of festivities nearby. Still, it was enough to draw his attention. The way he looked at her with eyes that seemed to probe into her very soul ignited something fierce and desperate within her. She wanted to tell him everything, the fear, the hope, the gratitude that consumed her. She wanted to scream his name, to claim her truth. But words seemed to falter on her lips. He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking into nothingness, and in that moment, she felt the invisible thread that had bound them together tighten. Jack reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her skin. "You've come so far, Lila. Remember that you don't have to be perfect, just be you." His words wrapped around her heart, weaving a tapestry of strength she didn't know she possessed. This was the moment of reckoning, the culmination of every decision, every risk taken. She inhaled deeply, allowing the fear to swirl within her as she searched his gaze for the strength she needed. Jack had given her the freedom to dance again, to find joy, and now she wanted to offer him her heart in return. But how could she convey the depths of her feelings, the way he had changed her, with mere words? The weight of unsaid emotions threatened to crush her as uncertainty hung heavily in the air. With every ounce of courage she had left, Lila took a step closer, the world around them fading into a distant blur. "Jack!" she breathed, her voice finally finding the strength she thought it had lost. "Jack, you saved me." The confession spilled from her lips, raw and powerful. She watched as his eyes widened, and in that fleeting instant, she knew she had crossed a threshold. "You have shown me what it means to live again. I want to shine for you. I want to dance for you." Tears welled in Jack's eyes as the weight of her words settled between them. In that moment, the night became a canvas of unspoken promises, the promise of a love forged in trust, hope, and resilience. As Lila prepared to step onto the grand stage, she felt renewed, her spirit no longer burdened by the past. In Jack's unwavering gaze, she glimpsed a future filled with possibilities, a future where she would not only dance, but live fully, courageously, side by side with the man who had believed in her all along. The sun dipped low, a molten orb spilling gold across the endless fields. Lila, barefoot on the cool earth, closed her eyes as a gentle breeze wrapped around her like a forgotten embrace. Each blade of grass whispered secrets, and the rhythm of her heartbeat echoed in harmony with the rustling leaves. Jack stood a few paces away, captivated by the way her spirit seemed to merge with the land. The weight of unspoken words hung between them like the heavy scent of wildflowers in the air. He took a step closer, his heart full of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper, something unnameable that surged like the river nearby. With a slow, deliberate motion, Lila lifted her arms as if inviting the sky to witness her truth. She swayed, each movement a dance of resilience, the limp in her leg forgotten in the grace of her spirit. Jack mirrored her, his hands reaching skyward, a silent commitment to always support her flight. As the last light faded, they stood together, shadows intertwined, breathing in the promise of tomorrow. In the hush of twilight, they shared a moment forged in silence, a pact of hope, where two souls danced, not alone but in unison, forever changed.